to call this meeting to order. City of Palm Coast City Council. It is Tuesday, November 21st, 2017. It is 9 a.m. Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Holland.
Here.
Vice Mayor Nobile.
Here.
Councilmember Cuff.
Here.
Councilmember Clufus.
Present.
Councilmember Shipley is excused.
Thank you. We'll now open it up to public participation. Any member from the public is allowed to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Any member, please state their name for the record, and your 3 minutes will begin. Seeing none, I'll close public comments. Move to agenda item number E1, approval of the minutes of the City Council. Entertain a motion.
Move approval. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number F2, a proclamation designating December 16, 2017 as the Palm Coast Yacht Club Boat Parade Day. Councilmember Clufus will be presenting. I would ask everyone that's going to be receiving this proclamation to please come forward and stand at the podium. So you guys can all come and...
This is not colored t-shirts.
Morning. Morning. All right. Morning.
Sharper presentation.
Yes. Morning. All right. Mayor, Council. Whereas the Palm Coast Yacht Club was established in 1979 and offers a variety of social activities for boaters and non-boaters alike, welcoming new members every month. And whereas the Palm Coast Yacht Club Holiday Boat Parade has been a holiday tradition in the community since 1983. And whereas this year's colorful and twinkling nighttime parade will begin at 6 p.m. on Saturday, December 16th, departing from Cimarron Basin to the Intracoastal Waterway. And whereas the parade will be escorted by boats from the Flagler County Sheriff's Office, Towboat US, and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and the Palm Coast Auxiliary of the U.S. Coast Guard. And whereas last year's parade set a record with more than 33 boats participating and hugging the shores of the Intracoastal Waterway with parties and music. And whereas all community residents and visitors are invited to celebrate the season at the 2017 Palm Coast Yacht Club Holiday Boat Parade. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the City Council and the City of Palm Coast, Florida, that December 16th, 2017 be officially designated Palm Coast Yacht Club Holiday Boat Parade Day. Signed this 21st day of November 2017, City of Palm Coast, Mayor Melissa Holland.
I'm Sarah Eulis, event captain for the Palm Coast Holiday Boat Parade, and on behalf of the Palm Coast Yacht Club, I thank you, Madam Mayor, and the City Council for recognizing the club with this proclamation. In 1983, the club inaugurated the parade, which has been in our care every year since then. This year marks the 35th annual parade, now a part of Palm Coast life. Just a day ago, I spoke with a man who has been watching the parade since he was a child, and this year is bringing his grandson. So this makes 3 generations of Palm Coasters. The parade is yet another reason why our city is among the country's top 50 places to live. And we thank you all for supporting this event. We will see you on the water December the 16th. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, photo time. What do you guys think? Should we come down or?
Probably go down. We'll come down. You guys want to line up?
You guys want to line up in front?
So Maeve, other duties as assigned?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, if you guys maybe want to kind of do I think we may need to. Yeah, I think taller people in the back and then short people in front a little bit. couples. 1, 2, 3. Okay, looks good.
Go back in line, they want another picture.
I think we're doing it again. Okay, looks good.
Thank you, guys. Hey, how are we doing? Good? Good to see you. Ciao, have a good one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I need them to Photoshop in my beard.
Who is that guy?
Okay, we'll now move to agenda item number F3. Is a proclamation designating November 28, 2017 as Giving Tuesday. Vice Mayor Nabeel will be presenting. Is there someone?
Is there anybody here for that? This gentleman.
I was looking for Amy.
Jeffrey, nice to meet you. Nice to see you. We met. Yes, yes. Mayor, Council, whereas Giving Tuesday was established as a national day of giving on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving, and whereas Giving Tuesday is a celebration of philanthropy and volunteerism where people give whatever they are able to give, and whereas Giving Tuesday is a day where citizens work together to share commitments, rally for favorite causes, build a stronger community, and think about other people. And whereas it is fitting and proper for Giving Tuesday and on every day to recognize the tremendous impact of philanthropy, volunteerism, and community service in the city of Palm Coast. And whereas Giving Tuesday is an opportunity to encourage citizens to serve others throughout this holiday season and during other times of the year. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, that Tuesday, November 28, 2017, be officially designated Giving Tuesday in Palm Coast, and that all citizens are encouraged to join together to give back to the community in a way that is personally meaningful. Signed this 21st day of November 2017, City of Palm Coast, Florida, Mayor Melissa Holland. Thank you. Now, come up there, we're going to do a picture.
Did he want to say anything? I don't know.
What do you want us to do?
Did he want to say anything, or?
Do you want to say anything?
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Say thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council and Ms. Mayor. Giving Tuesday began 6 years ago. 6 years ago. We started celebrating it 3 years ago at Flagler Humane Society. It's basically a day that follows Cyber Monday, Black Friday, when you're doing lots of shopping for others. It's a way to give back, following on top of all that towards the end of the year. It's a way you can not only give back monetarily, but they also encourage lots of volunteerism or just talking to your family when you're around the holiday table about things you believe in. So really appreciate your support. And at Flagler Humane Society, we actually have a matching gift campaign for if you make a donation on Giving Tuesday, your gift is matched up to $10,000. So we're really happy to have Palm Coast on board with us for Celebrate Giving Tuesday. So wish everybody happy holidays, and this is a great way to kick it off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, sorry, stole that.
Good to see you too. Goodness. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you doing this. Thanks. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
FlaglerHumaneSociety.org/Giving Tuesday.
Strike that.
We'll now move to agenda item number G4, which is an ordinance. Mr. Reichman.
This is the second reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article Roman numeral 6, Retirement, Division 2, Volunteer Firefighter Retirement System and Trust Fund. This is amending Section 2-549, supplemental benefit, providing for severability, for codification, providing for conflicts, and provides for an effective date.
Okay.
Morning, all. This is the second reading of this ordinance. It's a housekeeping item. This is the retirement program for volunteer firefighters. It is funded through state dollars that people pay when they, as part of their homeowners insurance premiums. Our actuarials have recommended this change to make sure that we stay fully funded. All the dollars are still available from the state. This just changes our plan to make sure that we meet future needs, increasing the amount of money going into the actual pension plan and not the other distribution formula that they have in the plan. We believe it's ready for final action of City Council.
Council members, any questions before I open up to the public for comment? Seeing none, I'll open up to the public. Any member of the public wish to make comment on agenda item number G4, please do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. I'll take it back to this council. Entertain a motion.
Move approval?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number G5, which is an ordinance. Mr. Reichman.
Yes, Madam Mayor. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, providing for the amendment of the official zoning map as established in Section 2.06 of the City of Palm Coast Unified Land Development Code by amending the official zoning map for 11.33 acres, more or less, of certain real property described as part of tax parcel ID number 391231, excuse me, 4001010056, generally located on the east side of Old Kings Road, approximately 1/3 mile north of State Road 100, which is also known as Moody Boulevard, and more particularly described in the attached Exhibit A to the ordinance. Rezoning from high-intensity commercial or COM3 zoning district to multifamily residential or MFR2 zoning district. This ordinance provides for conflicts for severability and provides for an effective date. Again, this is, Council Mayor, this is the second reading. It's a quasi-judicial matter. So if there have been any ex parte communications since the first reading, those need to be disclosed at this time.
I've received an email that I think maybe went to some of the other council members from a resident of North Old Kings Road who expressed opposition to the rezoning. But that's the only communication I've had.
Thank you.
Mr. Landon.
Mayor, City Council, this is a second reading. We had a lengthy discussion at our last meeting. There has been nothing that has changed since that time. This is they're on Old Kings Road, just north of State Road 100. The proposal is to incorporate a multifamily area in the commercial district that we have there along Old Kings Road. There have been no changes. We believe it's ready for final action. We're here to answer any questions if you have any additional questions.
Any questions, council member? If please do so at this time. Please state your name. You have to come up to the podium, state your name for the record, and your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my first meeting.
Okay.
My name is Tom Barrett. Do you need my address?
Yes, please.
172 Arena Lake Drive.
Okay.
Okay. I just have 3 questions about this situation. First question is, has a developer been selected yet for the project? And if so, who is it? I guess you don't have to answer them, but I mean, I would like answers at some point. Second question is, have any plans been drawn up showing whether the site will have apartments, townhouses, or condos, or a mixture of all 3? And the third question is, will Mr. and Mrs. Tom Gibbs have any input into the final design for this project, since they own the property and requested the rezoning to multifamily units? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll answer your questions following all the speakers.
Sorry?
I'll answer your questions following all the speakers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
Carl Murphy, 136 Serena Lake Drive. We know this is a done deal, so I won't go into anything because we know how it's going to happen. My question is this. Since you messed up Culvert Lane, and it's a monstrosity because you didn't know what was going to be built, what makes you think that this is going to be any different? But my main concern is, this is my 13th city of living in the United States and in foreign countries. And in 6 of those cities, I've been involved in homeless shelter work. So I ask you that when my group appears before you next spring, when we have decided on which property that we wish to proceed, one in the Z section, one in the C section, and one in the F section, that we be given the same consideration that Tom Gibbs is being given on his piece of property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. To the gentleman's first comments, has the developer been selected, and if so, who?
Bill, do you know who the developer is on this one at this point?
No, I don't.
Plans, have they submitted any plans as far as townhomes, condos, or apartments?
No, you know, as we talked about at the last business meeting, this is not really a development plan. This is strictly changing the zoning from commercial to residential and multifamily. The next step will be a site plan that gets into those kind of details, and then there'll also be plating that will be required. But at this time, we're just designated the zoning and don't have those kind of details. It could be any of those. It definitely could be townhomes, it could be condos, it could be apartments.
For the property, Tom Gibbs, I'm assuming he'll have input on. I'm
Well,
not sure how that.
If Mr. Gibbs owns a property now and sells it to someone, there may be deed restrictions on it, but usually not. And the new property owner would be the one that would have the input into the development.
And as far as the next gentleman's comments, Culvert Lane is not a City of Palm Coast road, it's a county road. So if the gentleman has issues on how Culvert Lane is being maintained or constructed, we have no governing authority over that other than the county's input.
Mayor, I think, although they were kind of sarcastic comments, I must say, I think he was referring to the high-rise that we've talked about on Colbert Lane and the multifamily high-rise that the county approved. So I would like to address that and the fact that that was approved by Flagler County and not Palm Coast, the City of Palm Coast. And so as far as the question is, how can we control this compared to that? Well, our standards are different. This will be under City of Palm Coast standards and not Flagler County standards. So if, you know, the difference between a Colbert Lane development that was approved by Flagler County and one that will start and finish here in the City of Palm Coast will be different because of different standards. So I think the residents in that area can be assured it will meet City of Palm Coast standards, including our height conditions and setbacks and landscaping and everything else.
To the second comment, as far as, I mean, if you're a property owner and have a proposal before the City Council, submit that, and we will hear that at that time, but there's nothing before us in those other sections currently.
Very important that each one of these is considered by its own set of facts and conditions. Every property is different, and there is no obligation of you approving or denying the next application because it will have a different set of facts, and you know, that's the case with all rezoning.
Okay. I'll take it back to this council. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I had a comment.
Sure.
We don't talk about it much as a council, but at forums and conventions and things for elected officials, it's really, we put an emphasis on ensuring that there's enough MFR land so that we can continue the taxability of our community. The property owners are homesteading houses, and over a long time frame, that's going to create an inequality on taxable property value. So having condos and apartments, I think, is part of our core long-term survivability as a taxing entity. We don't mention that frequently, but do you guys have the same thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yep.
And the apartments also make sense in providing housing for people who don't, you know, aside from the tax base, who just don't want to a homestead house. You know, they don't want to live in a home. They don't want to take care of it, that kind of stuff. And then there's the affordable housing, I'm not talking about any government programs. I'm just saying affordable housing. Instead of buying a house where you have to put money down and all that, you know, you just rent an apartment, and that supports the whole community, you know, and that supports the whole city from the tax base, you know, from increasing that from then just a homestead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I think we're going to see proposals like this come before us in the upcoming years. We all recognize the fact that we have an extreme shortage of diversified housing, and these are people that work in our community. And we had a discussion last week on the radio in which the sheriff had pointed out, when he started as a deputy in Orange County, he rented an apartment because that's what he could afford. I think he made $14,000 a year. And he stated that his deputies start out with overtime and benefits, they take home $37,000 a year. So the fact of the matter is, to have that affordable opportunity in our community, and those are people that are working very hard to protect us and provide a necessary service, I think is something that we actually should take very seriously. We are also seeing 7 or 8 cars piled up in residential areas right now because we do have a lack of diversified housing. So we don't want our residential communities turned into apartments, if you will, because it's shared housing. And I think this is an important conversation and one that will benefit the community as a whole. So good conversation.
Mayor, can I also interject in the conversation? This is another good example of the mixed use. This is a multifamily proposal that's in the mix of commercial. And that also is good planning from a standpoint of it helps the businesses thrive, and you'll get more of your mixture of commercial businesses, and it allows those residents to, you know, go get a cup of coffee, go buy groceries, et cetera, without always having to get in the car. So having, particularly your multifamily, really adjacent to or in the mix of your commercial makes good sense. The single-family residential area is about 1.5 miles north of this. So it's a good mixture of the apartments being in the commercial area and the single-family not, you know, being immediately adjacent to either one of those. It's good planning.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number G6. Mr. Reichman, it's an ordinance.
Yes, Madam Mayor. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, providing for the amendment of the City of Palm Coast 2035 Comprehensive Plan as previously amended. This is pursuant to Section 163 Florida statutes, and this amends the future land use or FLUME designation for 145 acres more or less of certain real property from industrial, greenbelt, and conservation to industrial, residential, and conservation, as described in more detail in the legal description which is attached as an exhibit to this ordinance. This ordinance includes a note on the future land use map to limit development on the subject parcel to 348 dwelling units and 350,000 square feet of the non-residential use, providing for conflicts, ratification, and prior acts, codification, severability, and effective date. This is a legislative matter because we're amending the comprehensive plan, but it is the second reading.
Mayor, City Council, this one was a major comprehensive plan amendment, so it actually had to go to the state for state review, and therefore it's been a few weeks since you had the first reading, but this is the second reading. The next item is accompanying rezoning. This is the third time you've seen this proposal. The first time you asked that the developer move the proposed multifamily area away from the single family and put single family adjacent to the existing single family area. They accomplished that where they've now have the commercial along, and maybe Jose, you could put up the site plan concept. I think yes, thank you. So they took the commercial area along US 1 and then nestled the multifamily behind that or adjacent to that, and then they included single-family along the borders. City Council at your last meeting requested two changes. Those two red areas in the corners, which still backed up to residential, existing residential. You asked that they turn those into open space. They have accomplished that. They've done that. So your proposal now includes the request that you made at your last public hearing. So what you're seeing now is the final proposed layout, so that you do not have any commercial or multifamily adjacent to the existing single-family area. Once again, I think it's a good mixture of commercials, multifamily, and single-family. We believe it's ready for final action. Jose is ready to answer any questions or get into any details you would like to get into, but there really hasn't been any changes other than those at the corners.
Okay, Council, any questions or comments before I open up to the public?
I did have one question, Mayor. I guess, and this would be directed to staff, Jose. We're looking at an MPD with a site plan that is essentially what we will be voting on.
Yes, sir.
And the development agreement will require this configuration.
Yes, sir.
And if the developer, whoever that winds up being of the overall project or any of the components of this project, comes back to the city seeking any further flexibility on this, what would be the process? Is it going to come back to us, I guess, is another way of putting it, or the planning board or staff, or how would that work?
Yes, sir. Any significant changes to the master plan development agreement, our code requires that it goes through the process, essentially, of a rezoning. If they were to, let's say, just as an example, propose that some of those multifamily units be converted to single family, that would certainly go through the process where it's viewed as a rezoning, that you go planning board and then 2 readings for city council.
Okay, and one other question, and for the record too, since this is quasi-judicial, I did receive an email from a resident with reference to this development, and I think it's fair to say they were opposed to it. But one question that was raised that I think is a good one is, as far as the development of the single family, which is the closest to and will have presumably the most impact on the single family neighborhoods to the north and to the east of this project. Under our current land development code, would a developer of that portion of this project be allowed to come in and essentially pre-clear all of those lots or large blocks of those lots, or would it have to be done on a house-by-house basis when a building permit was applied for?
As part of our platting process, we do require essentially a tree survey to identify any significant strands of, let's say, cypress or live oaks, and to the extent possible, those will be preserved or attempted to be preserved, but if not, to be mitigated. As I think as we go through that platting process, it becomes, there's some reasonableness that we have to take into account as to whether they can just clear cut everything or whether or not that we need to look at more on an individual basis and lay out what can and can't be cleared at that time.
But that portion of this project, assuming the site plan we're looking at now was approved,
yes, sir,
the single family would be developed and built the same as any other single family in Palm Coast. Somebody that owned that lot and wanted to put a house on it would have to come to the city before they clear that lot. They'd have to go through the tree survey and
yes,
all the same.
No, that won't be the case.
Okay.
This is going to be platted, and when it's platted, it will be developed as a complete development, very similar to what we've seen at Hidden Lakes, Grand Landings, et cetera. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jose, but you still have to have the tree survey.
Tree survey, yes.
But when you're going to put your infrastructure in and you're going to build the lots, they will build the complete lots, et cetera. They'll have to protect certain trees out there, but this won't be build a street and then each individual property owner comes in and gets a building permit. That's not the way most developments occur.
That's right.
You're going to have a builder come in, just like you've seen, Park Place, Grand Haven, you're going to have a builder come in and start building the houses and not just have individual property owners like we do in the main portion of Palm Coast. That's true with all your
Yeah, well,
developments
and I
in the
guess,
future.
and maybe I wasn't phrasing my question correctly, though, is before a builder, if a builder's going to build 12 homes in this area, clears the land to do that. I mean, I understand they have to clear for the infrastructure.
The builder won't clear the land. Who will clear the land is a horizontal developer, the one that puts in the streets, the utilities, builds the pad sites up.
Okay.
That's when the property will be cleared. And then they will record the plat, and then at that point, they sell it to a builder, and the builder starts building the houses on those developed lots. That horizontal developer may be the same person as a developer, it may be, or the same company, or it may be they sell it to other home builders. But this will be something that they will come in and develop as a subdivision, not as just put in the street and everybody comes in and buys a lot and goes builds their own home like you see in many of our areas.
But, okay, so my question then is, when do the trees on the lots adjoining the single-family home neighborhoods to the north and the east get cut down?
They will happen when the infrastructure goes in.
And when will the infrastructure go in?
That is a timing that we don't know at this point.
Okay.
It's, you know, they would, they have to come in and go through the platting process. So there will be a preliminary plat, then there'll be they'll go in and build all the infrastructure, and then they'll record the final plat, and then at that point, they can start selling the lots. But, you know, it's the clearing of the property that's allowed. Now, not all trees are going to, Jose's point was, not every tree is going to come down. They've got buffers they've got to recognize. They're going to have to plant trees also as part of that. But the horizontal development process is when the property starts getting cleared.
Is there any time frame for once the land is plotted where they have to re-ensure that the buffer is present?
That will happen at the platting stage. So before they start building lots, they have to have those buffers established. In place. And for the most part, this is a treed area that the key to it is keeping those trees there as much as possible.
Councilmember Cuff, does that?
That's.
Do want to reiterate, the item that I just read the title to was a comprehensive plan amendment. The corresponding or companion item that next we'll be reading and is the rezoning. And to the degree of specificity, of course, Councilmember Cuff, and that agenda item for the rezoning is because it's a PUD, it has the development agreement.
Right. Well, and actually, I apologize. My comment is really to the next item, but I assume with the staff presentation, I'm just trying to get any questions
correct.
about both items out.
That is correct.
For the staff to respond to.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'll open it to the public. Any member of the public wish to make public comment, please do so at this time.
Morning, Council, Mayor. I'm Mr. Neelabuk. I recently moved here. I just have one question on this. The impact on city services, how is that funding going to be coming from? Because you're adding a great amount of traffic, waste. All city services are going to be impacted by this big of a thing.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Tim O'Donnell. I live at 8 Corenda Place. I want to address the plat quickly and go to Bob Cuff's comment. To be totally open, I'm one of the people who sent an email and raised a question about the trees. The developer's original plan was to just put apartments back there and have a buffer where you now see the plat for the single-family homes. And there was going to be a certain size buffer for the trees, and then open space, and then up to like 400 feet with like 100 feet of trees. I suspect that the real plan now is to not build the single-family homes. His goal was apartments only. We basically just removed the buffer, and now we can clear those trees and not have single-family homes. I think that's the plan, and I'm suspicious. Also, the developer has been active in soliciting support from the chamber and prominent realtors. Several of these people have mentioned the need for rental units under $1,000. We keep talking about affordable, not low income, but affordable. At no time has the developer indicated rental units would be that affordable. When pressed on the issue, he states units would be based on the market. Therefore, the argument for living wage housing should be discounted in this project. If he builds apartments, they could be more expensive than renting a 3-bedroom house. The developer has stated in every meeting I've attended that multifamily could mean condos, it could mean apartments. He doesn't know yet. It's just a zoning change. So once again, any support for this zoning change based on the need for less expensive housing is based on faulty assumptions. Even the promise to give first responders, the sheriff's department, the fire department a discount, if it ends up being condos, as he has not ruled out, that is not true. In the change from the March meeting to add the single-family lots did not add value to the proposal. The proposed lots are smaller than Palm Coast standard size, and they replace the previously proposed natural buffer, as I already said. So if this is approved, please add language to it to force the single families to be built at some point. When people buy property next to land zoned commercial or multifamily, they should not complain when something commercial or multifamily is built there. This council typically rejects those complaints. I have not heard one resident complain about the commercial aspects of this project. We knew what was there when we purchased the homes. As in the previous agenda item, you didn't see a lot of people from the public coming to complain about that. We bought single-family lots next to 1-acre single-family lots. The developer bought the land knowing how it was zoned as well. Let's just stick to that zoning. Several residents have been told that we need hard data or scientific proof for our objections to the zoning change to be considered valid. I would agree that if we were the ones requesting this change, that would be true. We are only requesting the zoning remain as it was when we purchased our homes. We should not have to have statistical data to convince the council to treat Palm Coast residents in a fair manner.
Thank you for your comments.
Oh, thanks.
Next speaker.
Good morning. Chuck Johnson, 26 Kathleen Trail. I brought it up in several meetings before about the Army Corps of Engineers being out there years ago and stating to me personally that this is 70 to 75% wetlands. I brought this up in a meeting, Mr. Beebe, Mr. Blessing, whatever, said they had data. I've never seen that data. Last week, the week before, I hear machetes in my backyard. Okay, I walk out there and here's a team coming through there chopping away so they can put in a 1,500-foot path from Route 1 to my backyard. I asked them what they were doing. They're getting ready to do topography, or I don't have the word correct, okay, but they're going to test for wetlands. I told these gentlemen about the Army Corps of Engineers, and their response was, well, sir, what they're going to do is they're going to say, this here is wetlands. Let's use 10, 20 acres as a number, okay? This is 20 acres of wetlands. But the council and the builders can say, we're going to replace this wetlands with dry lands, and we're going to move your wetlands over here. I asked if that's legal, and he said, as far as he knows, it is. But that's the intent, to replace wetlands with so-called dry lands and just move the two. Well, what's going to happen when they put this 3-story building on top of this wetlands, and wetlands does what wetlands really does, and your building sinks? If you, Madam Mayor, no disrespect, but if you and your council can wave your hand and make wetlands go away, I'm going to the wrong meeting on Sunday mornings. Okay? God bless you all, and thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Sealing. My husband and I live at 21 Kathleen Trail.
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Noble for his support in the past. It's been very valuable to all of us. I'm not sure what changed your minds between the first meeting and the second meeting. It was not a good thing. Most of you have decided to let this investor have anything he requests, in spite of the effect on the neighborhood and the city. In spite of the fact that several other low-rent apartments are being built in this area. But if you can give us one thing, I would request a fence or a wall like he had on the first plan, which he removed. Now we would like to have that back. Who wants to sit and look at someone's little dinky house on a little tiny narrow lot that's going to be almost 2 lots compared to our one-sized lot? I don't understand what Mr. Landon was talking about clear cut the whole property except for a few trees maybe. Why does this property not have to abide by the same rules that the rest of the Palm Coast has had? If there's an empty lot that hasn't been sold, it has trees on it. Why does this property get to be clear cut so we can look at this arid desert land that he's proposing for us? There's nothing good about this proposal for us, for the city, for this neighborhood. And I think most of you know that. But what changed your minds, I have no idea. It was not a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
My name is Les Kinman. I live at 55 Karras Trail. Walking around the neighborhood the last few days, just seeing the homes that have went up for sale, families that have lived there for a long time, the flight has already started. It's a shame that what was done to this neighborhood, and I know you got a plot here. I understand that isn't even the final thing. We don't even know what we're going to have here when you're done. Also, I don't want that area to look like the area off of Belterra Avenue, or Belterra Road, whatever it is, that sit there for 2 years with all the trees tore out of it, all ripped up, and nothing done to it. That's not what I want to look out my back porch and see, with no trees, no animals, the things that I loved when I came here, and I've lived here for 14 years. So if you would make some consideration about that, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Your comment. Next speaker.
Hello, Council, Mayor. My name is Roger Sealing. I share a beautiful home on Kathleen Trail with my wife, Sally, who you've just heard from. I don't understand really why I'm wasting my time here, because I believe you've already all made up your minds as to how you're going to vote on this. But last spring, when Council tabled this issue, instead of voting it down, I felt that we, the citizens of the K section, were missing some secret code that was understood by the council and Mr. Beebe. Wasn't really a way of improve the use of the land, but more of something happened, something that, from what I understood this last meeting that I missed, that this issue was brought up on. The whole atmosphere in this room was different. It was all decidedly towards the developer. There's not one redeeming feature being proposed for the use of this property. I'm sure if you can't see it that way, you have to be blind. Last spring, this property was very dry. The several acre lake that is on the property was completely dry. people were riding motorcycles across it and doing donuts and just having a great time. I know a certain developer had his children up here doing the same thing. Today, they couldn't do that. That lake is completely full of water, overflowing. As one of our other neighbors mentioned, the survey crew that was coming through, they're walking around in knee-deep water in order to survey this. This parcel of land is a buffer. The trees right now provide a wonderful buffer for the land, for the noise from US 1 and from the trains. And the land, as being a wetlands, is a wonderful buffer to take, to accept the rain and the rains from the hurricane and all that. It's all down there. It's all very wet, and we've dried out. I don't know. I'm very disappointed that the council that I thought was, we've elected this council and the mayor, and we don't feel we're getting anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you for comments. Next speaker. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. First comment was about impact fees, or impact, and what they pay as part of the development order. Part of, I don't know where the gentleman came from, what part of the country, but we actually have impact fees in the state of Florida. They actually recognize that future development will pay for itself for the most part for city services. So every developer pays a utility impact fee, a transportation impact fee, a park impact fee,
Fire
impact fee, and those go right back into the fund for the impact that's created. So impact fees are actually adding to the capacity in which this development is adding to our community. Right. And so for transportation, for instance, there's a calculation that we have applied that the amount of impact it'll have on our roadways is in direct correlation to them increasing that capacity on our roadways, adding different signals, those kind of things have to be paid right in that impact on that development.
Right. Also, any of the infrastructure in this development itself will be paid 100% by the developer, and so any of the new stuff inside the development, our current taxpayers don't pay. Plus the fact that there's a commercial element here. Commercial actually pays more taxes than they receive in services, so versus residential. So from a impact on the city, and we've done that analysis, that this actually will pay for itself, we believe, long term.
And especially the taxes.
Yep.
So,
Mayor, if I could also, sometimes we don't remember what's happened at earlier times and earlier meetings, but I think in our last workshop, we had a presentation about transportation impact fees and how those are calculated, and those just don't come out of the air. They're actually based upon what the future, we have experts that come in and they look at what our transportation needs are going to be based upon anticipated growth and what the costs of those improvements to our transportation elements are, and those impact fees are calculated so that those expenses that are created by the impacts from development will be paid from those impact fees.
and let me also say that, I'm proud that we serve as a council that recognizes that we don't approve developments that come before us or propose developments and put the burden solely on the existing residents that live there or live in this community. So it is a very specific calculation that we derive. It does not come out of thin air, but rather based on a lot of engineering studies and capacity. So, and so as far as the Mr. O'Donnell's about the clear cutting, the plat, I think you need to address all of those.
Let me clarify that if the single family is not built, then that area won't be clear cut. If they build the commercial, it will only be the commercial area that was cleared for that. if they build apartments or the multifamily, whether it's apartments or condos. And we will make sure that they don't clear any of the area they don't have to. So if the single family is not built, there'll be still a buffer there that is natural area of today. And it's very common, if you see how all development occurs, it occurs in phases. So the idea would be is that they would come in with plats in phases, and we'd only allow them to clear those areas that they actually had inside that plat. So the whole property won't be cleared. It will only be cleared as development occurs. And then the conservation area, if you see the kind of the lighter green in the middle of that is the conservation or the designated wetlands. And there is a process.
Well, I don't want to leave the plat
Okay.
moment for a moment.
Okay.
We'll go through question by question. I want to be very clear
Sure.
to the residents that have spoken. The buffer is what? How many feet?
Jose, help me out. What is the buffer from the single family?
There is a 25-foot buffer between the existing property lines to the north. That would be the existing single-family homes, and where the new single-family line lots will begin, there would be that 25-foot buffer.
But if from the apartments to the single family, we're talking hundreds of feet.
Yeah, we're talking about, I believe, 450 to 500 feet, yes.
So
This will not be clear-cut. I don't want to give the impression that this will be bare land just sitting there.
No, but exactly. The question before was about how the single-family lots are developed. You know, if you look back at the history and you see the pictures of, say, the C-section, when they developed that, it was all clear. I mean, there wasn't a tree left anywhere, but over time they grew back because ITT's development pattern was to sell individual lots, and then people held on to those until they built on them. That won't be the case here. But you still, in order to create lots and ponds, see that all the ponds that are required for the stormwater system, et cetera, they dig that up and they put that, spread that out and create the lot. So you can't do that without, basically clearing the whole property. But only the property that's being developed at the time, not the entire 145 acres. So once again, if they don't build a single family and they're just building the multifamily, the single family area will not be, it shouldn't be touched at all, let alone clear cut.
And Bill Butler, our landscape.
Bill and Carol are, yes.
He goes out to every single site, determines which trees can be removed, which trees cannot.
Exactly, and we protect every tree possible that is a specimen tree or a historic tree out there, absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about the wetlands, because I can speak to this a little bit. We have had developers that get very frustrated with the city of Palm Coast because when wetlands are identified on parcels and properties, the Water Management District does not allow any development to occur. If you're talking about a mitigation bank, that's a very arduous process that very rarely actually happens with these kind of massive developments. So I know the Army Corps, does some testing as far as floodplain areas and controlled areas, but DEP gets engaged and involved with these developments. St. John's Water Management gets involved with these developments, and that is before any development ever occurs.
Right, exactly. And once again, there's designated areas that we won't allow them to touch. But Mayor, as you know, if you have little small isolated pockets, then that's where the wetland banks come into play, where they actually have to buy or credits, et cetera, that are greater than what they destroy. But, there's, like you said, a very long process to protect the wetlands, try to avoid them as much as possible. It's not just the city, it's a state, and this one I believe will have the Corps involved. I think so, all three levels, state, federal, and local level, to make sure that they meet all the laws regarding wetlands.
So going in and doing topography and LiDAR and all that, that's through the regulatory process that requires that for any development to occur on any site. in
Right,
Palm Coast.
exactly. Along with the tree survey and all those, yes. They've got a long ways to go before you'll see anything happen out here.
And also, the wetland mitigation is really more about the environment that it creates, not necessarily that the land has standing water on it. It's that micro biodiversity that they're trying to ensure remains there. So it's more about the plant life and the animal life than it is whether or not the land is wet. So just because it's wetland, if it does get mitigation banking occurs, it doesn't necessarily mean that that plat of land is going to sink. It's really more about the...
Well said, because all those ponds you see, those don't qualify as wetlands. They're very wet, but they don't qualify as wetlands because it doesn't create that environment you're talking about, yes.
And that's when we talk about our retention ponds in Palm Coast. I mean, people refer to them at lakes as different developments, but they serve a purpose, and the purpose is to hold that water. It drains to other spots. So there's a science and engineering that's associated also comprehensively of the flow of the water, the flow of the property itself, and how that actually integrates with our system overall. As far as the low rent apartments or the market driven, I mean, I think that's true with any development, that a developer goes in, does a market analysis study, determines what would be best utilized on that site. This is no different than any other private industry going in that owns property that's...
Whether it's a commercial, the multifamily, or even the single family, it's driven by the market, no question about it.
When we're talking about those smaller homes, those patio homes, those footprints...
These are 60 by 130 foot lots. Those are actually regular sized lots. I mean, Palm Coast and quarter acre lots is really quite uncommon, but 60 by 130 can accommodate a good size home, my opinion.
Okay. And I think we've recognized the other comments, just stating their concerns as far as selling homes and voting down. We've addressed the main technical issues as far as infrastructure goes, and certainly the trees.
Yes,
Seems to be a predominant conversation.
You know, I think, Jose, the key to this is, and welcome a motion to make it very clear in the development agreement that no trees and area will be cleared that isn't absolutely necessary for the phase or building at the time, so that we don't, we have a legal backing. I would encourage that from City Council to actually include that in your motion. Once again, you know, they have to build a pond. So it's not just where the buildings are, but it's the ponds and the buildings that would have to be part of the development. But only that is necessary for what they're going to build at the time, should they be clearing any of the trees. And we can make that happen.
And so what we're seeing here, as far as the conservation or protection on those corners, actually will, if approved, will go into that.
Yeah, the corners are going to stay green. You know, once again, you'll see a pond there, so it's either green or wet, I guess. But no development on the corners as you requested.
Any other council comments or questions? Yes, Council Vice Mayor Nobile.
I think, like I stated originally, I'm very opposed to the bait and switch. I don't like, I'm very verbal. When somebody buys a piece of property and the property next to them gets developed for its pre-designed or pre-assigned means, I just tell them, you bought the property like that. And this is the opposite. I mean, these people bought this property. The property was designed for, or was designated for estates, and we're turning it into a full-blown community in here, right in their backyard. I have no confidence in the commercial or the single-family development here. I just don't see, I mean, we're looking at a decade before that commercial develops in there. And the apartments or the condos or the townhouses, whatever they end up, they're going up first. And whatever that looks like or turns into will determine whether the single-family homes go vertical or not. And I just have no confidence in that. And personally, if I were living in that section to the north and east, I would be very upset with this. Unfortunately, I think the council should take that just deeply into consideration, that we should not be doing this to people who so much land in Palm Coast. We just approved one. That was in a perfect location. This is not a perfect location for that, based on what's already there. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you for your comments. Yes.
Just for the record, MLS feeds indicate that in the last 12 months, there have been 16 houses that have sold in that area, and there have been 4 listings, and only 2 of those have been within the last 6 months of 44 Caras and 2 Calantro Street. I just want to put that out there.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions from this council, I'll entertain a motion.
Again, the item before the council is agenda item number G6, which is the ordinance contemplating an amendment to the comprehensive plan.
I will make a motion approving item number 6, but it would be with the additional language that Mr. Landon had suggested that we urge the developer to take our consideration.
With guarding the clearing as phase, and that was actually more appropriate for the next item, but we'll incorporate it.
Yeah, I would suggest that not be included in this particular motion, because this item is just amending the comprehensive plan. When we get down from the level of the comprehensive plan down to the rezoning and the PUD with the development agreement, I think that would be more appropriate for if you wish to follow Mr. Lennon's suggestion with regard to the actual development scheme. The next agenda item.
Then I would still continue to make a motion on item 6, amending the master plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, passes 3-1. We'll now move to agenda item number G7, it's an ordinance. Mr. Reichman.
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is a second reading of the quasi-judicial matter to rezoning. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Palm Coast, Florida, providing for the amendment of the official zoning map as established in Section 2.06 of the City of Palm Coast Unified Land Development Code. This ordinance amends the zoning designation for approximately 145 acres from light industrial, or IND1, high-intensity commercial, COM3, and suburban residential district, Estate 1, to master plan development, or MPD, with a development agreement. Subject properties more particularly described in Exhibit A to the ordinance and graphically depicted in Exhibit B to the ordinance. Provides for severability for conflicts, provides for non-codification, and provides for an effective date. Again, I know that there have been some disclosures with regard to this quasi-judicial matter, but if there have been any ex parte communications since the second reading, those should be disclosed. Any further?
Same emails, yeah?
The same reference to emails regarding the clearing and other aspects of the development.
Mayor, City Council, we don't have any additional comments, but this is the one item that we would recommend that additional language that would prohibit any kind of clearing of the trees except for as necessary for their given phases.
And does the rest of our council feel okay with that? Bob, do you think that alleviates your concern?
Discussion on the item, normally, well, I think we need a motion on the floor to discuss it, so I will make a motion that we approve this item subject to additional language in the development agreement with reference to land clearing to make it as stringent as we can, that no area of this property, particularly the single-family home component, be cleared until development is ready to proceed, which well, we can speak to the reasons for that, but that would be my motion.
Second.
And council, and this obviously would be determined by staff, but the section that might make sense would be in Section 5, C of the attachment to your agenda packet item, which talks about the development plan, and specifically agenda, or that item 5C talks about the development in multiple phases. So that might be the appropriate place to add the language that is being contemplated that deals with the protection of the landscaping and the trees and the environment during that phase development.
Actually quite common. It's the right way to do it. Don't need to scrape the property until you need to.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we have a motion and a second then. And if normally I don't like to do this, I like my vote to speak for what I'm willing to support or not, but in this case, I think it deserves a little comment, and I'll try to be brief. I certainly understand Vice Mayor Nobile's objections to this, and normally I feel the same way. And I understand the skepticism of the neighbors, and normally I share that skepticism since I've lived here for 34 years and seen many, many changes in Palm Coast. And to the extent that I am willing to support this site plan with the motion that is on the table now, I am only willing to do so with the understanding that our staff and our planning board, if it comes back to them, and whoever is on the council, if it ever comes back to us, will hold this owner and any subsequent owners to the letter of this development agreement. At this point, I feel like I can only support this project based on the commitments that have been made and based on this project eventually being developed as it is shown or at a lower density. I tend to agree with Mr. Nobile's assessment of when and if the single family will be developed. If it's developed the way it's shown, I do not think it's going to be the blight on the community that some of the neighbors think it will be. But I certainly don't want to see anything more asked for on this property. I think the point that the developer, the owner, bought it knowing what they were buying and hoping they could come up with a plan that we would approve is a very risky maneuver. But I think what they have come up with, as long as we hold their feet to the fire and make sure that nothing more than what we see here, including the buffers, including the open spaces built, will be a net benefit to the community. And I recognize the opposition of the neighbors. I don't like making people unhappy, and I wish I could make everyone unhappy, everyone happy, Freudian slip. But on the whole, I think the owner has come a long way, and based on that, I am willing to support the ordinance that we have before us for this site plan and for the development agreement with those stipulations included.
Madam Mayor, as this is a different agenda item, I think it would be appropriate to reopen it for the public, for any public input on agenda item G7.
Yeah, sorry.
Nope, mine were satisfied.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. We'll now open it up to agenda item number G7. Any member of the public wish to make public comment on G7, please do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. I'll take it back to this council. Entertain a motion.
Oh, the motion.
There is a motion on the table.
Yep,
Yes,
motion on the floor.
Motion and
Yeah.
seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One opposed. It's 3-1. Okay, we'll now move to agenda item number H8, which is a resolution approving a request to waive the Community Development Block Grant Housing Rehabilitation Lien for property at 36 Seville Orange Path. Mr. Landon.
Mayor, City Council, this was a home that was recently rehabbed with the federal grant dollars. It's owner occupied. Shortly after, background is we require the repayment of the grant if within 10 years they sell the property. That's to protect it from a flipper getting the grant and then just making a profit off of it. In this case, shortly after the project was completed, the single mother died, passed away, and she has a child with disabilities that cannot take care of herself. So our requirements actually outline a method which you can ask for a waiver. That's what they've done in this case, where the heirs do not have to pay this back and to use the proceeds to take care of the child's needs. And it actually is in the standards that allow you to do that, but it takes a public hearing and your action in order to make that happen. So we believe all the boxes have been checked. We believe there's no reason not to approve this. In fact, this is exactly why you have those kind of exceptions to your rules, and would recommend approval.
Any council comments or questions before I open up to the public? Any member of the public wish to make comment on agenda item number H8, please do so at this time. And I'll close public comment. I'll take it back to the council for entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number H9, a resolution 2017 Brownfield Area Designation. Mr. Landon.
Mayor, City Council, this is a very unusual second reading of a resolution. It's because it's a federal grant program administered by the state. It's kind of a combination of federal and state program to encourage the redevelopment of areas that have had some environmental issues in the past. In this case, it's there at Roberts Road and Colbert Lane, where the old cement plant was, and it has the cement dust at the site. Being a second reading, we support this. It doesn't cost the city any tax dollars. It would be good to have this property redeveloped, so we think this is a good program and would recommend approval. Do need to ask for public comment and make sure we meet the federal requirements.
Any council comments or questions? I'll open it to the public. Any member of the public wish to make a public comment on agenda item number H9?
This is the property that butts up the seaway. Is that correct? Does this come as property contaminated?
We don't, if you have a question, you have to come up to the podium and ask.
Thank you, Council Mayor. Is this property considered environmentally safe, or does it require cleanup? And if so, is the EPA, or who's paying for it?
Thank you. Next speaker. Just that, so this resident understands, so when we designate a brownfield, it is absolutely entirely for them to clean up the property. It's a federal designation that does allow for the property to be remedied. It does go through an arduous process. There is kiln dust that has been located on this property. I believe the recommendation historically has been to encapsulate the kiln dust in a way for the material not to go airborne. This is exactly what we're doing. It's to clean up the property, remedy the property. The brownfield designation allows for different types of funding for that to occur, and it's closely monitored. Do I need to add anything else? Okay.
Mayor, if you don't mind, if I could just add to that, Michael Schnapps-Tyler with Cobb Coal, 149 South Ridgewood Avenue, Daytona Beach, on behalf of the property owner, Sunbelt Holdings, Colbert Lane, LLC. Mayor, that was a perfect assessment of the brownfield program. It's going to be a private agreement that the developer signs with the state of Florida that says they're going to clean up the property, they're going to pay for that cleanup themselves, and that opens the door to some state and federal economic development and regulatory incentives. Thank you.
Questions or comments, council? If none, entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Okay, other business. Agenda item number I-10, select a vice mayor for the 2017-18 fiscal year. I know historically, the city council has determined that this is a rotating process annually, that we do it out of respect to each council member that can serve as vice mayor at least 1 year during their first term. And this is sort of a process that we actually have a tradition with, in which the current vice mayor makes a recommendation and a nomination on who the concurrent vice mayor will be. I know Ms. Shipley, our council member Shipley, was before Vice Mayor Nobile, and so it would obviously be between Councilmember Cuff or Councilmember Clufus. So I will yield to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Councilmember Cuff to the Vice Mayor position for the fiscal year 2017-2018.
Second.
Any member for
Why?
the public wish to make public comment?
I get no say in this?
Please do so at this time.
Okay.
You don't get a voice in this moment.
I was only going to say, and I don't mean to cut off any public comment, I was only going to suggest that we allow Mr. Nobile to do it 2 years in a row, since I don't recognize him at the moment, but I'm sure that will change. No, I'm sorry.
It's better come back. You don't get the chair.
No, I know, no, I stay here, yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay. Any member of the public wish to make public comment on agenda item number I-10, please do so at this time. And I'll close public comment. I'll take it back to this council and call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously.
And I will keep our mayor in my prayers for her health and well-being on a daily basis.
Agenda item number I-11, which is select council liaisons to service organizations for 2017-18. What I would ask, if any council member has any particular body that they would prefer to serve on other than what they're serving on now, I think it's a good process for us to start the dialogue. If not, and everyone's very satisfied with their appointments other than our elected positions on this council, I would ask for that input now. If not, we will keep it the same.
Move approval of the current appointments to continue.
Second.
Okay. Any member of the public wish to make public comment on agenda item number I-11, please do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number J is the consent agenda. Any member of the public wish to make public comment on agenda item number 12, 13, or 14, please do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. I'll take it back to this council. Entertain a motion.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes unanimously. Agenda item number K, which is public participation. Any member of the public wishes to make public comment on agenda items not on the agenda, please do so at this time.
Steve Carr, Palm Coast. I'm just trying to learn some things. When we talk about the impact fees, we just had a tax increase to support more police. Is not any of the impact fee going to the sheriff department, or is the impact fee just insufficient as to how it affects that service to Palm Coast residents? Because we're absorbing the tax, so shouldn't impact fees also absorb some of that? Just a question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker. Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Mr. Lynn, as far as impact fees go, I mean, obviously, we discussed the different fractions of how we apply those. They are limiting on what we could pay for. Transportation, for instance, we know there are some limitations on what we can pay for. We do have a fire impact fee that pays for that impact on service, but as far as police go, we do not.
We do not have any on law enforcement. I don't know if it's allowed by state law. I don't think it is. And fire is strictly for fire stations, and you know, fire is a little different because you have the stations scattered throughout, whereas you don't usually have,
So basically, the impact fees can't cover any operational type
Right.
Costs, like
Right.
salaries and things like that.
Exactly. So even if you did have one, it wouldn't, if we had to hire additional firefighters, for example, we cannot use our fire impact fee for that. It has to be for the infrastructure of the actual station.
That's by state law.
Yes.
That is
But-
not prescribed by.
But it's an excellent question, because everybody always, okay, what can you use impact fees for? But state law is very specific, and you have to follow those.
Of course it is. Okay. Actually, it was a great comment. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Carr. Okay, agenda item number L, discussion by city council of matters not on the agenda. I'm going to actually start with Councilmember Clufus.
Okay.
First time ever.
Fair, all right. So I do have a few today. They are increasing in level of difficulty. So first one I had a question about was the trees on the side of Colbert that were brought to my attention by a fellow Grand Haven resident, and I hadn't even realized it, but going down Colbert, the opposite side of the street from the FPL lines, actually on the side of Grand Haven, there are a ton of pine trees that are leaning heavily, but there's vegetation on them. So they're not, I don't imagine that they're completely dead. So I wasn't sure how to answer the question that I was posed. Because they're tall enough where if they fall, they're going to cross the road. So this neighbor was concerned about the longevity of her being able to drive on Colbert without getting struck by a tree. I have another question about the FiberNet RFP, about the evaluation period and how that is going, and also the corresponding permits for conduit that have been pulled around the city. And then my final question, do you want to answer these as we go, or?
Yeah, go ahead now.
The last question I had was about the Diamond Communications comment that you had made last week about T-Mobile adding their infrastructure to our towers, and whether or not Diamond Communications was responsible for that.
Okay. The leaning trees, would have to take a look at them. I'm not prepared for that. I know that on vacant lot, there's a number of leaning trees. If they are jeopardizing a structure, then we require them to be removed by that property owner. If you can give me a specific location, then we'll go take a look at it. Or if it's all up and down Colbert Lane, we can take a look at it. Colbert Lane is a county road, so it's generates a little bit of issue as far as, are we going to do it or the county going to take it?
Understood.
Your next question was?
FiberNet RFP, I think it's an evaluation period, right?
Yes. They've come in, they've done the initial evaluation. Now they're going to invite all or a portion of them. We got 3 submittals, all or a portion of them in for the face-to-face interviews. And I don't know what the schedule is, but I know they're scheduling those now. So we're proceeding as normal on that evaluation. The Diamond contract, first of all, the one T-Mobile antennas that went up on the pole at FPC, which is not a city pole. It's actually a school district pole. The other one they're looking at is our pole at the tennis center. And no, I think this was not something that Diamond did. T-Mobile just knows. I've got a granddaughter that has T-Mobile service.
Those young kids.
So, and she gets rotten service at the high school. So she is all excited, and I think that's why they're doing it, is because they have some holes. So it's a good thing for Palm Coast. The fiber that is being laid right now is a private company that is laying it for, their contract is with Verizon. So they're laying fiber, not just in Palm Coast, but their backbone is US 1. So you see the lines going in at US 1, that's going through Palm Coast, and then off of those lines, they're going to go to every tower that has Verizon antennas on it. So that's going to be throughout the community. That company, we've met with them a couple of times. They eventually will be adding or offering a service to the community. So that's a good thing. We're going to have another provider that will, unlike our fiber where you have to connect to somebody else, they've actually got the connection all the way up to Atlanta and I don't know, wherever else, beyond. So having another fiber line in Palm Coast, another company to offer that service is very, very positive for Palm Coast. Did I get,
Yep,
did I
you
get
got
all?
all of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have a question about that then. So say they lay all of this fiber and we talk about how we utilize our fiber net.
Right.
In particular, we have a relationship with the school district. I mean, has there been discussions with us still being able to continue with that relationship? Are they going to go after them as a customer?
You know, first of all, we tried to look at sharing some fiber and those type of things. They came back and said Verizon didn't want to have a third party they had to worry about. They wanted to be able to go to this one company and rely on that one company. So we still may be able to reach some agreements to fill in some of our holes, you know, some of those gaps that we have. But for the most part, they're just moving ahead with laying the fiber for their Verizon contract. Mayor, to answer your question about the school district, sure, they're going to go after everybody, all the big ones too. You know, initially we were saying, oh yeah, we don't want the competition, but if you think about it, that's really not fair to the school district either. If they can get a better price and they make us sharpen our pencils, and that's really, I think, a good thing for the whole community. But there's, it's called an E-rate because it's federal government rate, and if they want to submit a bid, they'll, just like we can and just like Bright House, I think ultimately it's going to drive down the price for everybody. AT&T has fiber going into neighborhoods right now, going into homes. And Ms. Clufus, I don't know if you have it.
I do.
Okay, and Mr. Viscardi, I've officially declared I hate him because he brags about how fast his service is at his house, and it's amazing the difference. And so hopefully this allows that for businesses, residential, more than we can.
Try to address economic development in particular. So I know we just did it with Goya Sales, and we were able to offer them that as a remedy or an incentive for them to stay. Mm-hmm. We still will have the ability to have control over that if...
Ours, yes. Okay. But once again, if they can cut a deal with some private company that's... See, we can't get them outside of Palm Coast, so they still have to go to, you know, the, I don't know, Bright Houses, the Spectrum, AT&T, whoever gets them out to the internet. Well, this company provides some competition for that. So, and once again, I think that's really been our goal, is to provide high-speed broadband internet at a very competitive price that encourages the development. And if FiberNet allows that to happen or encourages that competition, great. I want to stress, though, that what we're, you know, a number one goal of very successful is we're saving money every month by not having to pay for all the connections between our facilities. And that will always be the case because we, you know, connect it. Plus, you're seeing more and more of the connections with our traffic signals, and the fact that, you know, Mr. Costello can sit there. Actually, he invites people in and says, come look at the camera. You think you can do, you know, you've got a problem with the timing at a signal? He invites people in and says, come take a look at it, and we'll go through this. And those are the benefits that we're getting directly with our own fiber. If we can benefit economic development, great. The private sector is more competitive. That's super too. I hope that's...
Question. The conduit that they laid, are there any agreements in place where we also can pull fiber through those conduits? Or
where we want it, we're still working on those.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, thank you.
Vice Mayor Nobile. Councilmember Cuff.
I hesitate to get philosophical during comments, but the agenda today brought up 2 points in my mind that I did want to address. One, and this deals with the 2 different rezonings we've considered today on Old Kings Road and US 1. In one case, there was public comment naming some individual owners or people who have interest in the ownership of the property on Old Kings Road. And at the same time, there were comments during the US One public discussion about investors. And in both cases, I don't mean to try to put words in anybody's mouth, but the implication in both those cases was that there was something improper in this. In one case, there was a longtime resident property owner, someone that I do not know personally in the sense we golf together or dine together, but someone that I've known since I came here 34 years ago, has been a backbone of the economy of Flagler County and Palm Coast and supporter of I don't know how many charities. On the other hand, we have someone that I wouldn't know if I ran into him outside of the council chamber. But, you know, the implication that somehow we're favoring investors or that I'm favoring an investor and we're selling out to developers, I know that's been a charge as old as land development in Florida. On the other hand, the implication, I think, is that there's some kind of a deal going on because somebody's been here a while. You know, I don't know what the happy medium is, but I find those kinds of comments, I don't want to say offensive because I don't want to ever discourage anyone from coming to one of these meetings or emailing us and telling us what they feel, what they think about anything that comes before us. But it bothered me a little to hear that, and I thought it was a little ironic that there was that much, you know, it was like polar opposites. I don't know whether there's a happy medium of how many years you have to live here before you're allowed to develop vacant property, you know. But the other issue, and we've discussed this, and I'm sure we'll discuss it again, is the, you know, rent versus own. I am getting, as a council member, increasing public input saying we need to do more to crack down on the condition of our single-family home neighborhoods. And usually the implication is that the offenders are renters, you know, in the same kind of, you know, like the old Western movies, they're sheep herders. You know, they're not cattlemen like, you know, good people. You know, and in the issue of multifamily housing, you know, it's rental. And the implication is if we approve anything, a rezoning, a site plan, or whatever that will allow multifamily housing, that's automatically going to turn into a seething hive of scum and villainy that will degrade the community. I know there was one public comment on the Old Kings Road property that we're going to be Detroit in a couple of years if this is built. I don't think so, but, you know, again, and I think we need to recognize, and I think this council does, so I'm preaching to the choir and I'll shut up as quickly as I can, but, you know, the implication that rental property doesn't pay its own way, I think Councilmember Kloufas's comments on one of the items spoke to this. You know, people that rent single-family homes or apartments pay taxes. You know, those properties are not tax-free. They're actually taxed for ad valorem purposes at a higher rate than an owner-occupied condominium unit or single-family detached home. And the notion that if I'm writing a check to a landlord for $900 a month or $1,200 a month, that a big component of that isn't my landlord's tax bill to Flagler County and to Palm Coast, I think is missing a very important point in terms of the economic future of this community, aside from the issue of, you know, how do we provide housing choices for our residents, including public employees, including service employees who need a decent, safe place to live for themselves and their families. And if we ever want to get beyond the perception of Palm Coast as you know, a retirement community, if we really want to make good on the vision that we've talked about in workshops of being a multi-generational city that addresses the needs of all of our residents, I think we need to get beyond the thinking about multifamily housing in the sense of us versus them. You know, the good guys and the bad guys, the people that are taking advantage of the system and the people that are supporting the system with their tax dollars and with their civic involvement. So here endeth the sermon, but I did feel that I had to make those 2 points, especially after today's agenda, but I didn't want to address it during the items because they were quasi-judicial items. And then finally, on a somewhat lighter note, I hope, I did want to ask staff for a quick progress report on the community center. I've been by there several times recently, and being a cynic by nature, it is a government job, but it looks like it's at least on schedule or ahead of schedule. And I'm anxiously looking forward to that reopening for our residents, and if we could have an update on that.
Yes.
Sorry.
Listen, that great comments.
You don't-
I appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah, the community center's come along very well. I was there a few weeks ago. I'm hearing nothing but very positive things about it. It's on time, within budget, no surprises. Other than typical stuff, but nothing that gets reported to me. So it's all minor things that are taken care of. Mr. Cuff, I got to take the chance to address your perception of government projects. The fact of it is that we have dozens of them. For us, dozens and dozens that are within budget and on time. But it's that one that isn't. It's that one bad meal when you go to the restaurant. That's the only thing you talk about, right? Yeah.
Talking about everything outside
I'm being,
Right.
yeah.
Well, yeah, so I know we're probably a little oversensitive about it, but, and it's things like, you drive by that one, but another one I'm going to take the opportunity is our $30 million wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
That one has also come along very nicely and is starting to get into those final stages, and it's, the contractor's been great. Our construction management company at the community center's been great. And that's really what it takes is the contractors having a quality contractor that does a good job. So those 2 major projects out there are coming along very, very well, as almost all of our projects. Our smaller projects, our restroom projects at the here in Town Center and the Indian Trail Sports Complex are coming along. Well sites, all of them out there. I wasn't prepared to come up with a list, but they're all doing quite well.
Well, and just as a follow-up on that, I was obviously not referring to any government projects here in Palm Coast. I know I should try to be a little bit less entertaining,
Yes,
but I grew up in the Northeast, and
I'm overly sensitive because of a little park project that was a total nightmare.
it didn't even cross my mind, just for the record.
It crosses mine all the time. So
Now, all I hear is how people are enjoying the park.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's as we knew, and probably if I hadn't brought it up, it'd never come up again because
right.
nobody remembers it now. Because it is a great park, and we're working on the splash park, and it's going to be an attraction regionally when we get finished with it. It's very exciting.
That addressed your question? Okay. And I just have one thing. I know we put in our strategic action plan developing a campaign for shopping local, and I didn't know when that was going to come back to the council with a strategy on how we're going to educate and inform our residents on why it's so critical to do so. And we have the holidays coming up, and I feel like we're missing a huge opportunity that we could have otherwise had. I mean, I can tell you, I don't know how many presentations I've done to the council, and Bo has put together a great PowerPoint for me to identify our projects. So when we talk about the community center and that it was paid for by sales tax dollars under a 5-year capital plan that we had developed over time, that's important. It always surprises them. When I tell them that when you fuel up in St. Augustine, you're fixing St. Augustine roads. If you fuel up in Palm Coast, you're fixing our roads.
Right.
I really feel like if we don't target that, we're missing out on a very solid opportunity, and every day that goes by and another resident is shopping in Ormond at Tanker Outlets, and I'm sorry to my colleagues in Ormond Beach, but I don't want capital projects built in Ormond Beach when they could be built here. And the Christmas season or holiday season is upon us, and I just haven't had any feedback as far as what staff is developing.
Well, this is one of those that our new economic development person was supposed to take and run with. And that advertisement's out. I know we've had a couple of hits. We're looking for young, energetic, trying to as you know, with the downtown area, put together a different kind of campaign than your typical big box manufacturing kind of campaign, and targeting that. So, Mayor, that's really what the goal is get someone in here that really focuses on that directly, and hopefully we have somebody here soon that will do that.
May I?
Yes.
I completely agree with everything our mayor said there, because every time I drive down Palm Coast Parkway and I see this sign that costs $7.8 million, I always want to put an asterisk on that and says fully funded by half-cent sales on gas, sales tax on gas. So yeah, you're spot on. People misinterpret where their monies are going when they spend them here.
Yeah, I mean, I was at an Eagle Scout celebration on Sunday, and I talked to the pastor for a half an hour about it. I'm like, do you ever tell your residents about shopping local? And he was like, well, what does that mean? And afterwards, he was surprised by it. So there's always this element of surprise. And I understand we're waiting for an individual to come in and develop that, but it'd be nice for us to do something in advance of the holiday season to support our local businesses, to also make sure that, we're not only supporting our local businesses, but keeping our neighbors employed, and then those dollars staying here is really, really critical. And I'd hate for us to miss that opportunity. So anything that you can direct your team.
And we can put out a blitz right now with Black Friday and Christmas coming up, something that's not totally developed, but something just for the holidays. Yes, I think that would make sense, that that's what you're asking for.
Yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
think it's just really important.
We'll get Bo and Cindy working on something with the BAC people just for the holidays. That makes
It's
a lot of sense.
Thanksgiving, and I can already see in our stores people shopping for Christmas. It's, I'm not one to put a Christmas tree up yet, but many are. So it just occurred to me that I think it's a good opportunity for us to be very strategic in our
Something that's
approach.
specific for Christmas, but not the broad, until we get somebody who can really focus on it.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Yep.
No other comments for me? Any comments from our city attorney?
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to follow up on Vice Mayor Cuff's sermon briefly, which I appreciate, because I share, I believe, in some of the frustration about the decisions that this council makes in its quasi-judicial capacity. People think that these decisions are done in a vacuum, and they are not. These land use decisions are guided substantively and procedurally by strict guidelines that we have to follow. We have a land development code that sets forth the standards for rezoning. And procedurally, we are required to only make those decisions based upon evidence that are received in this quasi-judicial, open, public process. And there is a balancing that is done. And it is contemplated and it is codified in our land development code with the vested property rights of the property owners balanced by these factors in your land development code against the rights of the privileges of the public that already live here in Palm Coast. But Vice Mayor Cuff, I do share in your concerns. People think, oh, well, this is being done based upon, these decisions are being made based upon conversations that were made at the Exxon station or something like that. And procedurally, that is absolutely wrong, and they are not done in a vacuum. We follow the exact guidelines that are, and we apply the facts that are deemed relevant by those guidelines in our land development code. So I can't say that every time. I can't repeat that every time we have a quasi-judicial hearing, but I wanted to thank you for your comments and would reiterate for those that may be listening that to a certain degree, we are applying the rules. We're not making the rules as we go along.
And before I turn it over to you, Mr. Lane, I would be remiss to say, I hope everyone has a safe and happy Thanksgiving and a holiday, and enjoy the time with your family and friends, and to the community as a whole. I hope you are taking this time to really give thanks to everybody that's important, as well as all of our residents in Palm Coast.
Great. I think I'll, back to Mr. Cuff's question about the community center, be a little more specific. The community center is supposed to reopen in December? Yeah, no, I'm going to start rumors. I just wanted to see Alex's response.
See Alex have a heart attack.
Yeah. It's March timeframe, I think, is what we're hoping to be in there. Is that true, Mr.? Yeah, it's, so March is when we're hoping to move in. The wastewater treatment plant should be operational January, February kind of timeframe. So both of those around the corner. Also, if you have noticed, our Big Blue water tank on I-95 has kind of grown some funky hair. Has kind of a spiky things coming out of the top. That is actually for a big tent. We paint that water tower every year, so eventually you have to actually sandblast all the paint off and start over again. And this year that's on our schedule. So, but to sandblast it, you can't just sandblast it and let it blow in the wind. So you will actually see a big tent go over this. Underneath that, they will be sandblasting the paint off, but keeping it confined so it doesn't get out into the environment. And then they'll repaint it, put the logo back on it, and start all over again. It's just a cycle you do with maintaining, obviously, a very costly infrastructure that if you don't maintain them, then you'll have to replace it, pay me now or pay me later. So that's what's happening there. People will very likely be asking you questions. This time of year, yes, Thanksgiving, a couple of things. We have our Beat to Feast 5K run that starts at 7:45 at Daytona State College. So those of you who like to run before you eat your turkey, it's one of our most popular runs, so you'll see a lot of people out there. But if you don't like to run before your food, tonight you can just come to Food Truck Tuesday right here at Central Park. And it starts at 5 o'clock here tonight. And then you have Friday, December 1st at 6 p.m. here at Central Park will be our tree lighting ceremony, and then that starts the whole Fantasy of Lights and Starlight holiday, and our parade will be December 9th. So those are some things to put on your calendar here for the holiday season. And then I'll close with what I consider great news, because we're so tired, the storm fatigue is. But all the storm debris has been picked up, except for a little bit of what we call C&D, construction and demolition. That's the building material, the fences, the damaged non-vegetative type debris. But I've been told that should be totally picked up by end of tomorrow. So it's being chipped. The piles are going away very rapidly, and we're going to put this behind us. And this will be the last report you get on that, other than the financial report as to how much it all ended up costing us with the hurricane season. So for us, that is absolutely excellent news, and we'll get back to normal. With that, one other thing about trash pickup: there's 3 holidays that Waste Pro does not pick up trash: Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. So if they will not be out Thanksgiving Day, so the regular Thursday pickup will happen Friday. The regular Friday pickup will happen Saturday. So it just bumps those two. So whatever it is, if it's regular household trash or recycling, Thursday goes to Friday and Friday goes to Saturday.
2 Monday holidays will go to Tuesday?
Don't let me
okay. So we just go for this week.
Let's just do this, and because about the time, if I lie to you, then it causes too many problems. But that's probably the case. But let's just get through this one. It always causes confusion, but definitely for Thanksgiving, that's what's happening. All right, and Mayor, that's all I have. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving.
His job.
I thought it was his.
No, it's your job.
Move to adjourn.